It occurred to me this weekend that this is roughly the 2-year mark of the most interesting thing I've seen in my comic book career. And an event that, well, I think it'd be a little too dramatic to say it was life-changing. It was definitely life-impacting and has continued to impact at least the comic side of my life up to this day. What event is that, you may ask? Well, you might have been able to guess from the video title. It was the Jawbreakers deal with Antarctic Press. First, the announcement that it was going to be printed, and subsequently, a few days later, the announcement that it was not going to be printed. Now, I want to say a few things up front. In this video, it's neither the point nor am I going to discuss the reasoning behind AP's decision to publish the book and to not publish the book. I don't have any direct insight into what transpired that made AP decide to pick the book up and then what made AP to decide to not pick the book up, other than what you can already find on the internet. Now, as you're aware of the lawsuit about this, there is a deposition that's out there between Mark Waid's attorneys and Richard Meyer's attorneys. So if you want to know any insight into that, just go read these depositions. What I want to do with this video is share a personal story of my own that came out of this experience. It's something that gave me a great insight into the idea of blacklisting comics and whether or not that was actually a real thing. One other disclaimer before I get into the story. The story is going to involve a group of comic book creators, but I'm not going to name any names for a couple of reasons. First of all, these are pretty small creators, and I'd say 90% of the people who watch this video would have no idea who they are. Second of all, it's kind of beside the point. I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. I'm not trying to call anyone out specifically in this video. I'm just trying to share an interesting story that I think will give you insight into the culture of comic book creation and its relationship to blacklisting. So in spring of 2018, I had just gotten my first comic book deal to get something published through an actual publisher, and that publisher, of course, as you can already guess, was Antarctic Press. I was to have a 5-issue miniseries to be published. It was going to come out late that summer and early that fall. Its solicitation and diamond was to take place early in the summer, so really just only a few weeks after the whole thing went down with AP and Jawbreakers and Mark Waid. I'd gotten this deal with AP because I was working with Ben Dunn, the creator of Antarctic Press, and at the time, one of the editors who was running a small office in Dallas, Texas. The main office for Antarctic Press is in San Antonio, Texas, and that's where, as far as I know, it's always been, and there are 35 years of publishing. But in the 2010s, Ben was living up in the Dallas area, and he came up with the idea of creating sort of like, shall we say, a satellite office to recruit talent from the North Texas area that could help produce new products for Antarctic Press. The initiative for that really got started late 2017, very early 2018. And he was very successful in rounding up several creators from the area who were very interested, myself again being one of them. I can't remember exactly. I'd say there was roughly about 4 or 5 different creative teams up in this area who had gotten projects aboard at AP. A lot of it was going to be printed through anthology works. Some of it was going to be individual miniseries. In my case, it was going to be both. I was getting some anthology work that was going to be printed very late in the year, and again, the miniseries, which was coming out in the early fall. Now, Ben was responsible for getting these projects together, though any project that Antarctic Press was going to print had to be approved out of their office in San Antonio. Ben liked to be very hands-on, not in an intrusive way, but he just really liked to meet with creators. He liked to see what they were doing. He was very interested in the process. So all the creators in the North Texas area were getting a chance to really get to know Ben professionally, and he to know them professionally as well. And he also helped us to get to know each other. So I met many creative teams that I wasn't actually directly working with, but we were all part of this sort of grand vision of this expansion for Antarctic Press. We discuss projects, share ideas, talk about scheduling, things like that, as well as also looking at ways to cross-promote projects. It was a pretty cool arrangement for those of us who'd never been published before, which was pretty much everyone through the Dallas area office. So it was some exciting times for us all. Now, at the start of May 2018, I have no idea who Richard Meyer is. Never heard the name, never heard of Jawbreakers, never heard of Comicsgate, didn't really watch any YouTube on comics very much, didn't really get into the whole social media thing, so I knew nothing about the whole, milkshake controversy that happened with Richard Meyer the year before. I had no idea Ethan Van Sciver had left DC. I had actually heard of him because he'd worked for DC for so long, and I had read some Green Lantern when he was drawing on it. But I knew nothing about him leaving DC. I knew nothing about why. I knew nothing about his role in Comicsgate, or again, just what even Comicsgate was. So one day I'm at work, and I get a message on my phone from one of the creators that I was the most familiar with out of the Antarctic Press North office, asking me what I thought about this Jawbreakers deal with Antarctic Press. Now, like I said, I'd never heard of Jawbreakers at this time. I'd never heard of Richard Meyer, so I had no idea what he was talking about. Specifically, he said, "What do you think about Antarctic Press promoting this Jawbreakers project over all the work that we have done these last few months?" It's not exactly a word-for-word direct quote, but it's pretty close. Now, putting it that way, what I'm thinking is that there's this guy named Richard Meyer who's come up with a project called Jawbreakers, who no one's heard of, just came out of nowhere, and now Aeronautic Press is all excited about it and is just forgetting all the hard work that we've done. So in that context, of course I was a little like, hey, what the heck? No, I wasn't real happy with that. But at the same time, I really didn't know anything about it. So I was really, I think, more curious than anything. So I quickly did a little research and, I saw the Aeronautic Press announcement. The announcement in and of itself was not anything really special. Now, I'm going to back up my story a little bit and include something I haven't brought up at this point in time. Although the miniseries I had that was about to be solicited through Aeronautic Press was going to be my first official publishing venture with a publisher, Aeronautic Press had actually just distributed some of my work earlier that year. It was a graphic novel I had crowdfunded with 2 other creators successfully, and had actually handled the printing of the book myself. But Aeronautic Press agreed to be the distributor for it through Diamond. So basically, it was listed as a, AP book in Diamond, but my 2 partners on the book and myself had pretty much done everything to get the book ready, got it printed, everything like that. AP was basically just rubber stamping it and helping me distribute it. So when I read this announcement and looked at it a little more, it looked like what AP was doing was going to be very similar to what I had done with my graphic novel. So basically, Richard was going to create the book himself, fund the book himself. I wasn't even sure, but it looked like he may even get the book printed himself. AP was really just going to help get it into stores by, being a redistributor for the project. So I'm thinking, okay, well, no big deal. So I go back to the creator who brought this to my attention and basically told him how AP had similarly helped me before, and I told him I didn't think they're doing anything unfair. In fact, they weren't really promoting his book as such. They were just making a single announcement. On the whole, it was nothing for us to be upset about. They basically just made an announcement about someone else who was working hard to promote their own project, and AP was just going to help them get into stores. Again, not that different than something AP had already helped me do. But then this creator tells me there is more I should worry about. So he invites me to be a part of a group chat on Facebook, a private group chat. And in this chat are most of the creators I'd gotten to know through the Dallas area office. However, Ben himself was not in the chat. It was there they explained to me the backstory of Richard Meyer. They told me about the dark roast. They told me about the milkshake scandal that had happened in 2017. And basically they were saying, hey, this is a guy, he doxes people, he harasses people, he's extremely toxic, he's extremely racist, he's extremely sexist. And basically, they made him to be out the worst kind of person that you could possibly imagine in this context. And I agreed. This sounded bad. This did not look like it was going to be a good look for Aeronautic Press. But at the same time, I was not about to take a bunch of secondhand information and make a big decision on it. Because basically what the guys in this chat were saying was, what we had to do was go talk to Ben and see if he can get the main office to cancel Jawbreakers. Or we collectively would leave Aeronautic Press. Now, there was no way, again, that I was going to give up something that was for me, and I thought for all of us was a really good deal we had going with Aeronautic Press, especially over a bunch of secondhand information about what Richard Meyer may or may not have said or done. So I started doing my own research on Richard Meyer and the Jawbreakers campaign. There wasn't really a lot to find out about Jawbreakers in particular. The Indiegogo campaign was already going on at this time. It was already very successful. Some of the art was put up there. It looked kind of like a good campaign, just knowing nothing else about it. The art was cool. The concept, it was what little was listed there seemed pretty solid. I didn't see anything really insensitive or problematic about the campaign itself. So I started digging into Richard Meyer to see what kind of a monster this guy was. I watched several of his videos. I tried to find one that I think would be really, insensitive or controversial or something, but I couldn't isolate a single video that I thought was really problematic. He was just clearly someone who had a strong opinion and he wasn't afraid to say it. I couldn't find any hard evidence that he had doxed anyone or that he encouraged others. The worst thing I could find out about him is his dark roast. Of course, the dark roast, some of the things he said in that, he owns up to it. I mean, it's pretty much the fact that the dark roast happened is a fact. He was not intending it for public consumption, so the fact that it got out there to the public was not his doing, and he seems kind of embarrassed about it from what I could tell, so I believe that part. But again, so that was the worst thing I could find about him, that he can really say some nasty things about people if he wants to. And while that's not really a glowing endorsement of someone's personality or character, let's be honest, I mean, how many people do you know in your own personal life who would do some serious trash talking about other people they don't like for whatever reason and say some pretty nasty things? So for me, that was not enough info for me to be willing to kill any kind of deal with Aeronautic Press. Honestly, I looked at that and I didn't care whether or not Aeronautic Press printed Jawbreakers. It had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with my projects. Now, I knew why the other creators had these concerns, and I could appreciate why they weren't happy. They felt strongly in favor of trends in pop culture that Richard was condemning in his videos. That, combined with their fear that Jawbreakers would hurt the reputation of AP and thus hurt the reputation and sales of their own books, it made sense to me that they wouldn't be happy. But, personally, I wasn't convinced it was going to hurt our projects. In fact, the whole controversy I thought was kind of helping us because it was putting AP back in the news. AP had been around for decades, but they'd kind of fallen off the radar, so this was putting us back on the radar. So I'm trying to say, hey, look guys, we don't have to condone Jawbreakers, we don't have to condone Richard Meyer's, but we can enjoy this publicity and try to find a way to use it to the betterment of our projects. Just as long as we stay behind AP, meaning that we're like, hey, they're our publisher, they're treating us fair, they're treating us right, we have good projects, you should come look at that. And to be honest, most of these creators, even including myself, at the time, I don't think we really stood much chance of getting another publishing deal. You've really got to get a publishing deal. I'll tell you, you want to know how to do it? I'll tell you exactly how to do it. You got to make the right friends. End of story. If you don't have the right friends, you're not going to get a publishing deal. There's like the exceptions to that rule are like 0.1%. We had all gotten the chance to know Ben. Ben got us into AP. That's really just how that worked. So I'm like, hey guys, we all have good things going here. There's no telling where this will go. Let's not burn any bridges. Let's not burn any bridges with AP or anyone else. Though I did say, look, you got some concerns. Why don't we just talk to Ben privately about this? So I went ahead and reached out to Ben myself. If you've read the depositions, you know that weekend he was actually down in San Antonio at the main office. So he was not in North Texas. And so I wasn't able to talk with him in person. We just swapped a few text messages on the phone. As I suspected, Ben had nothing to do with the Jawbreakers deal. That was entirely a decision that came out of the office in San Antonio. Now, he did like the idea of the Jawbreakers deal. He thought it was a good opportunity for APs. So he was glad they made the deal and, had no problems with it. He thought it was a good thing. When I told him the concerns some of the other creators had, he just kind of told us not to worry about it, that, it's not going to have any impact on anything we're trying to do, and we should just worry about our own projects. He also wanted to stress the point that, someone's individual ideology, whether it be far left, far right, somewhere in the middle, is entirely irrelevant as far as he's concerned. He doesn't care what political beliefs, what religious beliefs, what personal beliefs any creator has, as long as they bring a good project forward. The Jawbreakers project, in his opinion, looked like it was going to be a good project, looked, great art, interesting concept, already had a following apparently because the campaign again was doing well. So he said, from a business standpoint, this makes sense. And I will say, having worked with Ben, I can tell you that he definitely lives by the idea that he does not care personal beliefs, whether they're political or religious are, that he's willing to be friends with pretty much anyone. When it comes to working with creators, he really just grades creators on the merit of their talent and the product that they're producing. So I can definitely vouch for him being very sincere on this point. But what I found interesting is when I went back and discussed this with the other creators. Ben had convinced me that we just needed to not worry about the Jawbreakers deal. For my part, I was kind of excited that I thought, hey, this publicity, again, was putting AP back in the limelight. There's that saying, there is no such thing as bad press. Anything that keeps you in the news, you can use to your advantage. And in either event, there was obviously a very polarized view of Jawbreakers. There's essentially two camps, people who were all excited AP was doing it and people that were all angry that AP was doing it. And at this point, I felt that you'd kind of made your bed, you had to sleep in it. If you tried to back away from this deal, the people who were mad that AP wanted to print Jawbreakers would still be mad at AP. Now, they may not be as mad, but they're still going to be mad at the fact that AP gave it serious consideration. And then on the other hand, if AP backed away from the deal, then now all the fans of Jawbreakers are going to be mad, so no one's going to be happy with AP. So to me, the logical course of action just seemed to be, hey, I'm just going to worry about my project. I'll just help, the people working on with the North office to help promote theirs, and we'll just keep doing what we're doing. Oh, but those other creators in that group chat were not having it. Oh my goodness, they were not happy. And this is where I got some insight onto the idea of blacklisting. Now, obviously, again, I'm talking about a bunch of creators who they're getting their first projects out. So these aren't people who have any influence in the industry. They can't go around and say, let's blacklist these people and actually get people blacklisted. But that's not the point. The point is that these creators were very indicative to the personality and the ideology and the way of operating that many comic creators have in the industry, whether they're small time or big name people like Mark Waid. What it came down to is that they stood for an ideology that wasn't absolute, and there was no distinction between business and personal. If Antarctic Press was going to release a project by a person who had an ideology so outspoken, then as far as they were concerned, AP was rubber stamping it and saying this is what we believe. Despite the fact I can tell you there are lots of people who've worked with AP and still do who are not Comicsgate-like, that they're very much the opposite. But to these creators, it didn't matter. One of the creators in this group had a project that was going to be published and had already been solicited through Diamond, but he was so mad that Ben didn't take a stand against Jawbreakers that he broke his contract and pulled his project. Even after the Jawbreakers deal got canceled, that didn't matter. Why? Because again, the fact that AP considered Jawbreakers was too much for some people. These people who were crying out for AP to cancel the book, they wanted to punish AP no matter what they did. They just wanted to punish Richard Myers too. So if they get the book canceled, that was a win for them. But they were never going to be okay with AP after AP even deemed to consider the idea of Jawbreaker. And whatever influence they had, however small it would be, they would do what they can to find ways to get Meyer and people like him out of the industry entirely. And especially to not allow his book to be distributed through stores. Again, remember when I got in this group chat with these creators, their objective was to get the Jawbreakers deal killed if they could. I mean, they are aware that they don't have that kind of pull with AP, but they wanted to use what they could. They wanted to get me on their side. They wanted to get that project canceled. They couldn't stand the idea of it being printed for a company they were working with. So what's the point of the story that I wanted to share? Well, it's just to say that number one, blacklisting is a thing, it's real, but it's not like this secret clandestine thing. There's not a group that has a list anywhere that's talking. There's no editor at Marvel calling up DC going, hey, I've got some names, make sure these people don't get work. It's just that creators who disagree politically with other creators are willing to use the network they have to pressure others and push those they don't like out of the industry. And the comic industry is a small industry when you talk about like large global industries. It's pretty much an industry where anyone who's anyone knows all the important players. So if one guy goes, hey, I want to get, so-and-so canceled, if that person who wants so-and-so canceled has any pull, someone like Mark Waid, for example, it's very doable, especially since they'll have a lot of allies who will back them up on that. So, yeah, is blacklisting a thing? Absolutely. I can't look at the situation from what I saw, how these creators were working, and then, of course, what happened with Mark Waid, what he did, and say that it's not a real thing. I think it speaks for itself. The question isn't really, is blacklisting real? The question is should there be blacklisting? Now, you may be someone watching this video who's totally against the Jawbreakers deal and was glad that AP canceled it, and you really don't like Richard Myers. Okay, great. So, are you for blacklisting? And maybe you are, and if that's how you think, then that's how you think. But for anyone out there who thinks that blacklisting is a bad idea, then, well, let's let the story speak for itself. And anyone out there who thinks that blacklisting is just fake propaganda, well, all I can say, I got to see firsthand that it's not. And because I was willing to stick with AP no matter what decision they made, and I did, once they canceled Jawbreakers, I was like, hey, whatever they want to do, it's cool. Again, it didn't affect me. But the fact that I was willing to stand with AP because they were willing to give me a chance, and the fact that I was not willing to go out and openly denounce Jawbreakers and Richard Meyer, I've had some people who won't do business with me anymore, who they block me on social media and they don't want to talk to me, and they kind of look at me as like public enemy number 2, of course, with Myers being public enemy number 1. So. But I didn't take a stand that they wanted me to take. And so for them, all I was part of the problem. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd appreciate it if you'd like, subscribe, do all that kind of fancy stuff, and help me kind of build up this channel. And I will talk to you all later. Bye.